Send her home, the colonel ordered, until she finished the course in world record time. The desert base shimmered under a punishing sun. Heat waves rolled off the dirt, blurring the jagged edges of the training course that sprawled ahead. A savage maze of wire. Fire and walls built to break the strongest. Recruits stood in line, sweat dripping, boots sinking into sand. Most of them were men, muscled, loud, trading jokes to mask their nerves. But when she stepped out of formation, silence fell like a curtain. She was small, lean, her face half hidden under the rim of her cap. The name on her uniform read, A. Ward. The colonel squinted, disbelief etched in his expression. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered. "Who authorized this?" The instructor beside him hesitated. "Paperwork came from Central Command, sir. Says she passed preliminary with distinction." The colonel's jaw tightened. Distinction? For what? Typing speed? A few of the recruits chuckled. One of them, a tall corporal, smirked and said under his breath, "She won't last 5 minutes." The colonel didn't bother to lower his voice. "This course is designed to destroy egos, not build them. If she's lucky, she'll make it halfway to the mud pit before she quits. Save her the embarrassment. Send her home." But the woman didn't flinch. She didn't look angry or humiliated. She just stepped forward and said quietly, with respect, "Sir, let me run." The colonel stared at her for a long second, then sighed. "Fine. Don't say I didn't warn you." He turned to the instructor. "Start the clock." The whistle blew. A blur of movement erupted as recruits dove into the mud trench, the first stretch of the obstacle course that looked more like a battlefield than a test. The air filled with the sound of grunts, curses, and the metallic rattle of barbed wire. But the colonel's gaze stayed fixed on her. She didn't sprint, didn't rush. She dropped to her knees, slid under the wire, and crawled with a precision that was almost unnatural. Each movement smooth, controlled, her elbows driving like pistons through the muck. "Come on, faster!" Someone shouted. She ignored them. Her pace looked slow, too slow, until, 20 meters later, when others began to falter, tangled and cut by the wire. She slipped through clean. By the rope climb, half the recruits were already exhausted. The colonel folded his arms, watching her reach for the course line, coated in sweat and dust. "Let's see if she can even reach the top," he muttered. She didn't leap or pull wildly like the others. She wrapped her ankles, locked her grip, and began the climb in perfect rhythm. Pull, brace, exhale. When she reached the top, she didn't cheer. She looked out across the course for a brief moment, as if memorizing it, then descended smoothly and kept running. The colonel's frown deepened. "She's not strong," he said. "She's efficient, sir. She's saving energy. That's not rookie behavior." By the halfway mark, only 5 recruits remained moving at full pace. The rest were sprawled across the course, gasping or vomiting in the sand. She didn't stop. When she reached the water barrier, she plunged in headfirst, surfaced, and swam across with long, practiced strokes. Someone muttered, "She's insane." Another whispered, "No, she's trained." At the final checkpoint of that segment, the colonel checked the time. His brow creased. "Impossible," he murmured. "She's ahead of schedule." The instructor raised an eyebrow. "Still want to send her home, sir?" The colonel didn't answer. He just watched her step onto the next stretch of the course, her uniform soaked, her face unreadable, her stride steady. And for the first time that morning, the laughter had stopped. By the time the sun reached its zenith, the air above the training grounds shimmered like molten glass. The sand was hot enough to burn through boots, and the air smelled faintly of cordite and diesel. The real test was about to begin, the section everyone called the course from hell. The recruits lined up, panting, their uniforms drenched. The colonel stepped forward, his voice cutting through the haze like a whip. "You think you've survived the worst? This is where the real training starts. Live rounds, collapsing bridges, smoke, and no second chances." The crowd of trainees straightened, though several were already trembling. Ward, quiet, expressionless, adjusted her gloves and rolled her shoulders. One of the sergeants muttered to the colonel, "Sir, she's not even tired." The colonel didn't reply. His gaze followed her like a hawk's. "Then let's see if she can stay that way." The whistle blew again. The first obstacle roared to life, an open pit with smoke grenades filling the air. Recruits dropped low and scrambled forward, coughing, blinded. The ground shook as blanks fired from mounted turrets mimicked incoming fire. Ward didn't freeze. She pressed a hand to the dirt, feeling the vibrations, orienting herself by sound. Then she moved, not crawling blindly like the rest, but weaving through the fog with deliberate rhythm, each motion precise. "She's tracking sound," the instructor whispered, astonished. By the time others found the exit, she was already through. Next came the bridge collapse simulation, a narrow plank suspended over a trench of shifting mud, timed to break under weight. One by one, recruits hesitated, arms flailing as the bridge groaned. Ward stepped onto the plank and paused. The crowd held its breath. Then she sprinted, not fast enough to panic the structure, but light enough to skim across as it buckled behind her. The wood gave way just as her boots hit solid ground. The colonel's jaw clenched. That timing was perfect, the instructor finished for him. A series of explosions echoed in the distance, the fire lanes. Rows of metal barrels belched flame, forming walls of heat that distorted everything beyond them. Recruits hesitated, waiting for gaps to open. Ward didn't wait. She gauged the intervals, then darted through the first wall of flame. Her sleeve caught a lick of fire. She dropped, rolled once in the dirt, and kept running without a pause. A ripple of disbelief spread through the onlookers. Even the colonel leaned forward slightly. "She's not just brave," he murmured. "She's calculating risk in real time." "Sir, she's clearing zones faster than anyone on record," said the timekeeper, eyes on the stopwatch. "Keep timing." At the grenade crawl, a live test awaited. Trainees had to drag themselves beneath a low barrier, while controlled detonations erupted ahead. The blasts were designed to shock even seasoned soldiers. Ward slid down, pressed her cheek to the dirt, and began crawling, inch by inch, synchronized with the rhythm of the detonations. When a grenade thudded too close, she didn't flinch. She adjusted course with surgical precision, slipping through the smoke like a ghost. By the end, her uniform was ripped, streaked with mud and soot, but she was alive, unscathed. When she emerged from the trench, a few recruits were still frozen in place, trembling. One of them stared at her, wide-eyed. "How the hell did you do that?" She wiped her face, her voice calm. "You listened to the explosions. They talk before they hit." The sergeant blinked. "What did she say?" The colonel's expression had changed entirely. No longer dismissive, just focused, measuring. "She's been under real fire before," he said quietly. "This isn't her first battlefield." The instructor frowned. "But sir, she's never served combat. Records say she was transferred straight from advanced recon training." "Then those records are lying," the colonel muttered. He looked out at the course, at the small figure moving swiftly through the final checkpoints, low obstacles, razor wire, smoke and sand. And for the first time, the colonel wasn't thinking about sending her home. He was thinking about where she'd learned to move like that. She'd finished the entire course not only without a single disqualification, but in record time. The whispers spread like wildfire. She beat the Delta record. "No way, that's a myth." "Check the timer, man. It's real." Instructors exchanged uneasy glances. They had seen men break bones and keep crawling, but what she'd done, precise, cold, unstoppable, was something else. Colonel Davis watched her from a distance, arms crossed. His jaw flexed once, the only sign of irritation. To him, recruits weren't supposed to surprise him. Especially not a woman the brass had practically forced him to take. He motioned for Sergeant Kane, his longtime aide. "She's good." "Too good." Kane hesitated. "Sir?" "No one passes my course the first day. Not without help." "Run her background again." "I want to know who the hell she really is." Kane nodded, but the colonel wasn't finished. He looked back at the obstacle field, where Ward knelt by the water barrels, quietly wrapping a strip of torn uniform around her hand. Her movements were deliberate, disciplined, not a twitch out of place. "Tomorrow," Davis said, "we make her prove it wasn't luck." The desert was crueler this time, hotter, brighter, the wind laced with grit sharp enough to sting. The recruits lined up again, most still nursing bruises from the previous day. Colonel Davis walked before them, boots crunching in the sand. Yesterday was the course. Today is the gauntlet. The recruits groaned softly. Everyone knew the gauntlet wasn't part of standard training. It was something Davis had created himself, a personal test for sorting soldiers from survivors. "This isn't required," he added. "You can tap out now, no shame." No one moved. He stopped in front of Ward, looking her over with deliberate scrutiny. "Except maybe you." "You've already proven your point." A few recruits smirked. It sounded almost like permission to quit. A graceful exit. Ward looked up at him, expression unreadable. "Permission to run the gauntlet, sir." Her tone was steady, respectful, but her eyes didn't flinch. The colonel's lips curled slightly. Not a smile, a challenge. A few recruits tried to hide their grins. Even Kane let out a quiet laugh before quickly stifling it. The colonel looked at her for a long moment, then turned to his aide. "She's not going anywhere." As Ward saluted, a small smile ghosted across her face. Not arrogance, but understanding, because for the first time she wasn't proving herself to anyone. She was simply reminding them she already belonged there. That night, long after the last flare burned out and the base fell quiet, Colonel Davis sat alone in his office. The air smelled of gun oil and coffee, the scent of long hours and hard truths. On his desk lay a classified folder. Ward, Alyssa M. Restricted access. He'd pulled every string he could. The file wasn't in the normal channels. It had come through a backdoor system usually reserved for black ops. Even Kane had hesitated to touch it. Davis opened the folder slowly. The first few pages looked routine. Birthplace, enlistment date, basic training evaluations. But halfway through the paper changed. The ink was darker, the format unfamiliar. Entire sections were blacked out, and then a seal he recognized. JTF Spectre. His pulse quickened. That wasn't just any unit. That was off books. Spectre didn't officially exist. He turned another page. A blurred photo. A woman in desert camo, face streaked with ash, standing beside a shattered convoy. Her expression was calm, almost detached, but the caption below it sent a chill through him. Operation Cobalt Rift. Outcome 26. Rescued. 19 KIA. Operator Reaper 1. Davis whispered the name aloud. Reaper 1. He'd heard it once in Afghanistan, whispered among Rangers and SEALs. A ghost sniper who operated alone after a mission went bad. Half the stories said she was dead. The rest said she preferred it that way. He flipped to the final page. Reaper 1, Alyssa M. Ward. Decommissioned, declared KIA, Helmand Province. A photo of her dog tags lay taped beside the note. He stared at them for a long moment, then closed the folder. She wasn't just trained, he murmured. She was forged. The next morning, Davis found her at the firing range. She was alone again, adjusting a rifle with surgical precision. Her arm was still bandaged from the gauntlet, but she didn't seem to notice the pain. He walked up quietly, his boots crunching in the dust. "You could have told me," he said. Ward didn't look up. "Told you what, sir?" "That you were Spectre." Her hand paused mid-motion. She exhaled once, not in surprise, but in resignation. "That file was supposed to stay buried. I don't like ghosts on my base," Davis replied, "especially ones that were declared dead." She gave a small, humorless smile. "Then maybe you shouldn't have resurrected one." For a moment, neither spoke. The wind carried the faint hum of engines from the hangar bay. Finally, the colonel asked, "Why come back? You had clearance to disappear. You could have stayed gone." Ward adjusted the rifle's sight, her voice low. "Because I wasn't finished." "With what?" "With them." She nodded toward the distant hills, the training range beyond the base perimeter. "Half of those kids will be in combat in 6 months. The other half won't make it that far. Someone needs to teach them what the manuals don't. How to survive when the plan collapses." Davis studied her profile. The scars along her jawline catching the morning light. "You think that's your penance?" "No, sir," she said softly. "It's my duty." By the end of the week, every recruit on base knew the truth, or at least the legend. The quiet girl who'd been told to go home was once part of the most secretive task force the military ever denied existed. Her name spread like wildfire. Ward, the Reaper they'd written off. And though she never spoke of her past again, her presence changed the base. Recruits stood taller. The colonel stopped doubting. And when gunfire echoed during drills, even the veterans paused, listening for that familiar, steady rhythm that could only belong to one shooter, because everyone knew now, the Reaper was back. The alert siren shattered the still morning air. What began as a routine training day turned into chaos within seconds. Inside the command tent, Colonel Davis leaned over a radio console, listening to the voice crackling through the static. "This is Bravo Team. We're under heavy fire. Repeat, we're pinned down East Ridge, grid 379. Request immediate evac." The operator's voice was shaky, muffled by gunfire and sandstorms. Davis recognized it instantly. Those weren't trainees. That was an active SEAL unit conducting recon outside the perimeter. How the hell did they end up that far out? He barked. Kane replied. "They were chasing a rogue convoy." "Looks like an ambush, sir." Davis grabbed the headset. "Bravo, this is command. Hold position. Air support is inbound." But before he could issue another order, a second voice broke through. Strained, urgent, one he hadn't heard in years. "Negative, command. We can't hold much longer. 2 men down. Sniper fire from elevated ridge." The colonel's jaw tightened. There was no air support ready. The A-10s were grounded for refuel, and the recon drones were still 15 minutes out. 15 minutes they didn't have. He turned to Kane. "Get me anyone who can shoot straight and breathe." But before Kane could move, a calm voice spoke from the doorway. "I can." They both turned. Ward stood there, rifle already slung, eyes locked on the map. Davis frowned. "You're not cleared for field duty." "Neither are they," she said quietly, nodding at the blinking distress signal. "But they're dying." He opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. Because something in her expression wasn't asking for permission. It was a soldier remembering what unfinished business felt like. Minutes later, the base gate opened. Ward rode out on a modified ATV, engine roaring through the desert wind. The radio clipped to her vest buzzed with constant updates, call-outs, screams, static. As the ridge loomed into view, she slowed. The smell of cordite and smoke filled the air. Bullet tracers sliced through the dust like streaks of fire. She dismounted, scanned the terrain through her scope, and saw them. 5 SEALs pinned behind a ruined transport, the ridge above crawling with hostile silhouettes. Ward dropped flat, adjusted her breathing, and calculated the wind. The first shot cracked. The ridge went silent for a second, then another muzzle flash appeared. She shifted 3 degrees, fired again. Second hostile down. Through her comms, one SEAL shouted, "What the hell? Who's covering us?" "Doesn't matter, keep moving." Another yelled back. Ward kept firing, methodical, precise. Every time a hostile raised a rifle, it was answered by her trigger. Within 3 minutes, the ridge went quiet. She exhaled, stood, and waved toward the downed team. "You're clear. Move!" The SEAL leader stared at her for a moment, recognition dawning through the dust. "Wait, you're not the time," she interrupted. "Grab your wounded. I'll cover the exit." By the time they reached the extraction point, the medevac chopper was already descending. Ward helped load the wounded aboard, then stepped back into the fading storm. The SEAL leader looked at her again, blood on his arm, disbelief in his eyes. "Reaper 1, I thought you were gone." Ward adjusted her rifle strap. "You weren't supposed to remember. You saved us." "No," she said quietly, looking toward the horizon. "I did my job." The chopper lifted off, leaving her standing alone in the swirling dust. When Davis's voice came over the radio, it carried something he rarely showed: pride. "Ward." "Report. All men accounted for, sir. No friendly losses." A pause. Then softly, "Welcome back to active duty." The desert was calm again. No alarms, no gunfire. Just the low hum of the wind moving through the empty ridges. But word of what happened spread faster than any radio signal ever could. By sunrise, every tent, every training field, every mess hall whispered the same thing: the Reaper's back. Recruits who had laughed behind her back now walked straighter when she passed. Veterans nodded in quiet respect. Even the hardened instructors, men who once dismissed her as just a trainee, fell silent when she stepped onto the range. Because the story wasn't just that she'd saved a SEAL team. It was how she did it. Alone. No orders, no backup. Just a ghost coming out of nowhere, making the impossible look methodical. Colonel Davis stood at the overlook above the base that morning, coffee cooling in his hand. He watched Ward below, leading a group of new recruits through live fire drills. She was precise, patient, and quiet, the same composure she'd shown from day one. But there was something new in the air now. Belief. Kane approached, holding a file. "Sir, the Pentagon's asking about her reactivation. They want to know if she's cleared for reassignment." The colonel didn't answer immediately. He just kept watching her. You know, he said finally. The first day she arrived, I told her she didn't belong here. Kane smiled faintly. And now? Now, Davis said, this place doesn't run without her. That afternoon, as Ward cleaned her rifle in the shade, a young recruit hesitated nearby, clutching his helmet. Ma'am, he asked softly, is it true? About Reaper One? She looked up, meeting his wide, uncertain eyes. What do you think? He shuffled awkwardly. They say she was unstoppable, that she could take down targets over 2 miles out. Ward gave a small smile, her voice quiet. If she was smart, she didn't do it alone. But you saved that SEAL team, he said. No, she corrected gently. We did. Every soldier who trained me, everyone who stood by me, they're part of every shot I take. The recruit nodded, visibly absorbing the weight of that truth. As he left, Ward looked down at her reflection in the rifle's scope, a face lined by scars, eyes steady. There was no pride there, no triumph, only purpose. That night, Davis called her to his office one last time. The brass cleared your record, he said. You're officially reinstated. They even offered a commendation. Ward shook her head. Let the commendation go to Bravo team. They're alive because of you. That's enough. The colonel leaned back, studying her. You know, you could have stayed gone. Most ghosts don't return to the living. Maybe, she said, rising. But the living still need someone watching the perimeter. Weeks later, a new plaque appeared on the training wall, a quiet tribute without ceremony. It bore no photo, no rank, just a line of text engraved in steel. Reaper One, the ghost who taught them to live. Recruits touched it for luck before missions. SEALs mentioned it in toasts after deployments. And the colonel, whenever he walked past, would pause, just long enough for memory to catch up, before saluting the metal plate. Because Alyssa Ward had done what no legend ever truly does. She came back, she fought again, and she left behind something far rarer than fear or fame, belief. The belief that strength doesn't shout, it doesn't demand to be seen, it just shows up, even when everyone else thinks it's gone. And somewhere out there, when gunfire breaks the silence, soldiers still swear they hear her call sign whisper through the comms. Steady, calm, unmistakable, Reaper One, watching the field.